Welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. My name is Michael LeBlanc, and I am your host. This podcast is produced in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. Gary Hawkins is a visionary and retail industry leader whose deep industry knowledge combines operational experience and technology savvy to provide a unique perspective that you need to hear. Gary joins me to discuss his forthcoming book, Bionic Retail: How to Thrive in an Exponential World, which will be released this April, but is available for pre-order now at your favorite bookstore. Let's listen in now. Gary, welcome to the Voice Retail Podcast. How are you doing this afternoon?
I am doing great, Michael. Thank you, and thank you for having me on.
Well, it's great to connect. Where am I finding you today?
I am in Denver, Colorado, where I live. And as I was saying a few minutes ago, we got a little bit of snow on the ground, but spring is on the way.
Now, are you a Denver native? Did you move there? Or what's your backstory?
No, so originally from upstate New York, where I spent many years of my life, and then a couple years in Washington, D.C., 5 years in Southern California, and we came here to Denver about 4 years ago.
Hey, well, listen, like I said, thanks for joining me on the pod. You got a very interesting background. I mean, everybody talks about this intersection of technology and retail as if it's something new, but you and I both know it is not new, and technology may be advancing a little faster than it used to, for sure. That's, I guess, the essence of this book, of your book. We want to talk about your new book, and let's just start at the beginning. You know, who are you, and what do you do for a living?
So I literally grew up in the world of grocery retail. My family owning some stores and wholesale business years back in the upstate New York area. And when I say I literally grew up in the store, I did.
Right.
You know, as a kid.
Stocking shelves, yeah.
You got it. You know, doing pretty much all those great jobs all over the store. And then long story short, you know, after graduating from college, spent some time elsewhere, but came back to retail and wound up launching one of the first loyalty programs in the U.S. supermarket industry 30 years ago. And it was really that sort of sent me off on this whole new path. But today I spend my time at that intersection of retail and new innovation, new technology, new capabilities, helping guide new innovation into the industry, helping retailers understand, you know, new solutions coming into the market, the implications of them, and so on.
So would it be fair to describe you as more an analyst, consultant, advisor than an operator at this point for most of your career?
Yes.
You get to sit back and watch these things and try to interpret. Also, probably, I bet you spend a lot of time parsing the signal from the noise. I mean, there's so much stuff that comes out, and you're trying to figure out, as retailers are, you know, what's actually going to benefit me, my customer, and my bottom line. I'd imagine that would take up a bit of your time, yeah?
It does. I mean, I have a lot of young companies reach out to me, you know, wanting me to make me aware of what they're doing, get feedback, et cetera. But to your point, a lot of things I see are simply different, you know, versions or colors of, you know, similar solutions, right? Yeah. But what does strike me is how frequently something totally new and different, some capability I had never thought of or envisioned before, does come across my radar screen. And it's happening more and more frequently as technology continues to accelerate.
You know, it's also the case. I had a couple of episodes ago, I was talking to a great consultant, Marshall Kay, and he's from Avery Dennison. He's basically the guru or missionary, or whatever you want to call him, for RFID, which is a technology that I thought would have broken through way earlier. I mean, you see the mono brands, you know, the Decathlons and the Uniqlo's using it, and you're starting to see it at Walmart. But if there's one technology that surprises me in some ways that it hasn't been adopted quicker, that would be the one. Do you share that assessment, or what do you think of RFID in retail?
No, I would agree with that. I saw something not too long ago, a use case of a retailer leveraging that technology and, you know, solution provider, and had similar thought. You know, gee, this has been around quite a while, really hasn't hit critical mass, but maybe it is now time.
Yeah. Well, I guess the RFIDs themselves, they've come down in price. So that's kind of eliminated at least one hurdle. Like, there's still a process hurdle and all that stuff. Anyway, getting off on a bit of a side tangent. But you described your journey as Odyssean, marked by a vision to leverage data and technology. What in your personal experiences got you down this path and have kind of informed your approach to innovation when you look at it and when you talk to retailers?
So a really great question. And, in the book, I relate some of my history. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, I launched one of the first loyalty programs in the U.S. supermarket sector 30 years ago. And at that time, and really the few years leading up to that point in time, I had been reading about a few retailers, and very few, either in Europe or over in Asia, that had launched frequent shopper programs. And what they were doing effectively was giving the shopper a barcoded card or ID that could be used to check out to trigger electronic coupons. Because in the fast-moving consumer goods world of retail, at that time, retailers would use, paper coupons, right, printed on the front page of their weekly ad flyers, as really the only way they had to control the movement or control quantities of products they were selling, often at a loss. But as I started reading about that, I began to understand that, that ID also served as a way to identify that shopper to that transaction. And if we built a record of those transactions up in a database of some sort over time, we could gain a new view to the world of retail. Rather than simply having to look at just transactions, we could now look at and understand a true customer shopping behavior over time. And it was that insight, I guess, that really triggered or inspired that vision of bringing the pieces together to launch one of those first loyalty programs, begin collecting all that data, understanding it, because again, this was a brand new world. Nobody had written that book yet.
Yeah.
And understanding how to use that and how we went to market.
And in my mind, and I too ran a big loyalty program, Hudson's Bay, where we had, 9 million records, and we were doing a lot of lift and shift stuff because we were trying to get away from the accidental benefits. In other words, I didn't mean to buy this. Oops, I'm going to get the benefit anyway. But you didn't really change behavior. You just you didn't really accomplish anything other than giving some points. I feel like from a technology perspective, cloud computing was underneath it all a big breakthrough for these programs, that you could harness that million points of data and pull it all together. And maybe AI is the next one. What do you think?
So I would agree with Michael, what I think you're saying, that a lot of retailers that have customer data or shopper data like that, leverage it back into merchandising, into product decisions, assortment decisions, pricing decisions, et cetera, right? Where I found the real strength of it, and again, we were a smaller operator with just, a couple few stores. Where I found the power of it was in understanding shopper behavior and learning how we could influence that, how we could grow some portion of our shopper base into becoming more loyal, more frequent, higher spending shoppers. And that was really the eye opener for me. And
that was the epiphany. That was the epiphany that you had, basically, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. All right, well, let's turn to the book a little bit. I love talking to authors. So the book is Bionic Retail: How to Thrive in an Exponential World. Who did you write the book for? Who should read it?
So certainly anyone in the retail industry. Again, my background is grocery, so let's broaden that to fast-moving consumer goods. But many of the principles that I speak to in the book are really available and applicable to any form of retail. More specifically, I guess my audience that I had in mind were really retail leaders and executives.
Now let's talk about your tradecraft right in the book. So some people, they work their entire career and it culminates in I've learned all this wisdom and I'm going to apply this wisdom of what I see happening today. Others kind of, continue to iterate on that. What was your approach? Was this really kind of one of those books that just was in you and getting ready to write and it was there for you to just get down on paper? Or was there's some kind of a epiphany or inspiration that happened in the last couple of years that said, now I got to write this book because things have changed somehow?
So actually, Bionic Retail is my fourth book.
Okay.
My original two books I wrote probably 20 or so years ago that were focused around customer loyalty and data and all that. But really, the inspiration for Bionic Retail came from discussions that I have and have been having with retailers, wholesalers across the industry on a frequent basis. And what I saw happening was that retail executives were focused on, in some cases, almost enamored with sort of the next shiny object that was going to come along. Is it computer vision? Is it AI this or AI that? And I felt that they were missing a significant piece of what was happening. In short order, what I felt was they were focused on the next shiny object and failing to understand the bigger picture, that we have now shifted into a world where technology, and more specifically, computer processing power, data, and AI are growing exponentially. And we're past that inflection point, and things are accelerating more every day, and the implications of that for how retail operates.
Let's talk about the title, Bionic Retail. So it really, you talk about the book, and it's a great book. I encourage everybody to read it. We'll make sure and put some links in the show notes. It's available. It's available now, right? It's out now. I just checked. So it's available where people love to buy their books. You talk about a new retail species, which is kind of fun, emerging from this chaos of innovation, this technology and human capability coming together. I mean, listen, I'm a big fan of the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman. So the title resonated with me. Shout out to Lee Majors. That's right. Married to Farrah Fawcett. Oh, geez, these are names from the time tunnel, right? Anyway, at its time, it was just like a mind-bending show. And it must have inspired you to current events. Talk about that and why you call it Bionic Retail.
Well, so actually, I came up with the title of Bionic Retail from a different idea or source of inspiration. And just very quickly, my wife rides horses, and she was looking for a new set of gloves one day, and we came across the store that was called the Bionic Store. And, happened to sell riding gloves and so on. And as I came across that, it really got me thinking. And then Bionic obviously led me towards the $6 Million Man as sort of an analogy.
We could fix it. We could make it better.
That's right. That's right. Because, as I explained in the book, if you step back a little bit and look at what's happening, we're seeing retailers deploying more and more physical automation, automated distribution centers, micro-fulfillment centers, delivery bots, drones, et cetera. A lot of parallels to like a bionic leg or bionic arms, et cetera. So I thought that analogy was sort of interesting.
Now, the book highlights a gap, as you articulated, between shopper expectations and what you call traditional stores. And we all know the pace of change seems to be just happening faster and faster. So how do retailers think about this? How does Bionic Retail bridge these two things, where shopper expectations can either be, I want extreme efficiency or I want great experience, and retail is somehow charged with enabling both of those things?
Well, so again, and I think coming back to part of the inspiration for writing the book was that I did not see retailers really understanding that this pace of change was happening far greater outside their organizations than it was inside their organizations. Right? So, and that's really important. And I think one of the most important messages within the book is helping retailers understand that and understanding that there are so many things that retail, practices, processes that have made retail successful for decades, but that are now constraining the benefits the retailer can get from new innovation.
Interesting. So elaborate on that a little bit. So give me an example of something that you think has been missed. We talked about RFID a bit earlier on, but is there anything else that jumps out at you?
I'll give you a couple really simple examples.
Yeah.
Look at the number of retailers. Certainly, let's just look at supermarket retail, drugstore retail, that continue to put out a weekly ad, right? Whether it's print or, there's typically a digital version of it. But filled with just mass promotion, right? And hoping that somebody in their market area that mass promoted item is going to appeal to. Completely ignoring the power of technology today to provide really sophisticated personalization, right? So why put out a mass weekly ad with mass promoted products that only appeal to literally a small number of shoppers in your market when you could put out a communication that provides relevant promotions to each of your different shoppers?
I mean, we're kind of getting to something we've been talking about the industry for, 20 years. We were talking about 20 years ago, the death of the flyer. Now, Canada is a bit more of a flyer nation than is the U.S. The U.S. is more of a catalog nation, if you had to draw big picture comparisons. But, you've got retailers here who do many of the things you described. They have great loyalty programs, but they also put millions of flyers on doorsteps because it's efficient. There's no way to custom drop different flyers. And I feel like, the competition on the breakfast table is significantly less and it gets more attention. I feel people want to get off their devices. And this is what retailers tell me, that, hey, look, we know that, a third of these flyers are going in the recycling, but we also know that when we walk away from them, we lose a little something. Others have completely walked away from them. So we're really at an interesting time. So I'm actually getting to a question here, if you can imagine that. Did you imagine flyers would be long gone already, or do you think there's still a role for flyers as kind of that medium as a foundation on top of which you build those more focused loyalty communications?
So I think depending upon the retail vertical or sector, there may continue to be a role for the weekly flyer, but I think it's going to look far different. I'll give you a quick example. Early on when I was still a practicing retailer and we began collecting all this data, we began to understand the inefficiency of that weekly flyer. And where that led us over time was reducing, the page count, reducing the number of colors used, reducing and fine-tuning the distribution of it, where we actually saw shoppers coming from, right? And so as we reduced the cost of that mass flyer, we redirected a good portion of that money over into building digital engagement, providing other services, values to shoppers, and so on. So it was let's call it a intelligent, or hopefully at least semi-intelligent redirection. And I think that opportunity exists for pretty much any retailer.
I guess we're starting to see that at the large retailers with their retail media networks. I'm sure you're following the evolution of these retail media networks, where they're funneling vendor money, not just what was just co-op money, but also brand spend into more focused on-site or eventually on-prem kind of marketing. Yeah.
Yes. So, retail media networks obviously have exploded over the last couple of years. We expect them to continue to grow fast. And in my experience, many of those dollars are coming from what were, national advertising budgets, right? Dollars that were going to television, radio, et cetera.
Yeah. And the platforms, the other online platforms all kind of pulling together. I guess some of that's the death of the cookie, right? The new privacy stuff that's kind of driven that as well, I feel.
Well, so that's correct. But The other thing I see happening, though, relative to retail media, and it was funny, I was just speaking about this with someone else earlier today, that, many retailers think it is still simply about eyeballs. In my mind, really is not. It's bigger retailers having the ability to bring all the pieces together to provide full attribution. So knowing who the audience is, who saw that promotion, who went to the store, who actually bought the product, closing that whole loop. And for the first time, being able to tell advertisers exactly what their spend achieved.
Yeah, hopefully that works out because, that depth of measurement also has an interesting outcome. Hey, this doesn't work at all. In this context.
That's right.
Flyers, hey, they work. Sales went up. Listen. What gets in the way of retailers from getting to this future retail vision, this bionic future that you outline, where pace is just the pace of change is disrupting. It's relentless. What gets in the way, and I guess what barriers can we clear out that enable retailers to keep up with these changes and even get ahead of them?
Well, so I think the first barrier is really simply understanding, right? Again, many retailers of all sizes I speak to on a regular basis really do not understand the exponential growth of technology, right? Many people, when they hear the word exponential, we all hear that word and read about it every day, but we sort of mentally convert that to fast. And exponential growth, yes, is fast, but exponential growth is truly a specific thing, right? Where it is doubling in any given period of time. And it's accelerating. And many people don't understand that. So I think the process begins with understanding. And then next is, as you were saying just a minute ago, Michael, is, this pace of change, right? And that really comes down to, in my mind, retailers identifying those beliefs, those practices, processes, we've always done it this way type of thinking, identifying those things and then setting them aside so they can come at new innovation, new ideas with fresh thinking, clean sheet of paper.
What's the mechanism for that? Is it bringing in folks like yourself, reading a great book like this? Is it bringing in, mentorship in reverse, right? Bringing in young people who are kind of swimming in this soup. What mechanisms work to kind of make that shift in an organization? So
I think each of the things you just mentioned certainly can work, right? And we all learn differently. Some people learn best by reading, others by doing, seeing, etc.
Yep.
Where we've had success, where I've had success, is certainly in my writing, trying to convey this, but also in speaking, and then working with groups, companies on more of a one-on-one type basis, right?
Okay.
Through workshops, that type thing.
So it feels like you need a change agent. So, like as I said, I was doing a keynote recently. You can't be a prophet in your own land. I mean, you can say these things, but sometimes you need to bring in some external influences. All right. Now, you do get a bit philosophical in the book, and you talk about adopting bionic retail principles that has even broader societal effects beyond retail. What were you thinking? What are you talking about there?
Well, so towards the end of the book, there's a chapter, and I did a quick refresh for I was joining you today, and I titled that chapter "Emerging Butterflies." And butterflies as it relates back to chaos theory and so on. But what I was trying to focus on were more societal trends, major things happening that were and are going to impact retail. So, for example, in the food industry, we're seeing more and more convergence of the food industry and the healthcare industry.
Sure.
Right? As more and more people understand that food is medicine, what I eat directly, impacts my health and so on.
Big trend, yeah.
A couple other things are an outgrowth of that one is there's a lot of work and science going on around longevity. Helping people live longer, more productive lives. Is retail, is the world ready for a world where people are living 10, 20, 30 years longer than they did a few years ago, right? And again, all the implications of that.
Interesting. Okay, let me ask you a fun question. If I gave you a magic wand, is there any technology you'd put back in the bottle? Put back in the toothpaste tube? Is there anything you think? Because it's not all good. Listen, man, it's not all good, right? I mean, there's some very troubling numbers around isolation and around being, we have an epidemic of loneliness. If you look at the numbers, you've got a lot of things that are not always that positive. Is there anything that you wish, I wish we could get a better hold on this and outside in and around the world and in retail?
Well, so I completely agree with you around, what you were just saying, right? Around, there seems to be just a growing wave of isolation, people spending more time on their devices, sitting in front of their faces and so on. I don't know if I would say, gee, let's put the smartphone genie back in the bottle, because there's been so many good things that have come from providing that type of power capability to individuals. And I don't think there's probably ever been an instance in the history of mankind where a technology has been invented that it does successfully get put back in the bottle.
Yeah. Maybe we need a big solar flare or something to
that could do it. That's going to cause some issues.
That's going to cause some other issues, yeah, for sure.
Just to sort of close out that thought, though, I think when you look at AI, and certainly a lot of good can come from AI, but there also can be some scary things around that, right? If you really understand how AI works, where it could go, and so on.
Who should do that? I'm a fan of government doing that, because private sector will just, picking up on the themes of your book, they will just grow exponentially until it's too late.
So I agree with you that private industry probably is not the one to do it, but I also don't think government can do it. And this is a topic I guess lecture at different colleges and universities periodically, and this sort of topic or question regularly comes up. And I don't think government can successfully legislate technology, because technology is literally accelerating by the day. Our governments seem to work slower by the day. And, as we've seen, certainly here in the U.S., when some of the big tech moguls, are brought in front of Congress and the Senate, the government officials really don't even know what questions to ask.
Yeah, it's not exactly a moment of best and brightest.
No.
But I don't know. It's a question I'll leave with you and leave with the audience, and maybe something for us to ruminate on, because I don't think the industry can self-regulate. I think the platforms have proved that there is no kind of self-regulation. So I think there's got to be something. And the governments have done an okay job over historically. If you draw a kind of a more analog reference to telephony and managing and breaking up baby bells and doing all this stuff, so they're behind, but at least they hopefully have the interests of people in mind. I don't know how it's going to work out, but maybe that's your next book. How about that?
that could be, and I agree. Historically, government seems to have worked, but again, I think we are in a world today that has never before existed. Right, a world where technology has surpassed that inflection point on that exponential growth curve, and it's accelerating by the day.
Interesting. Well, like I said, maybe that's your next book, but this book is Bionic Retail: How to Thrive in an Exponential World. My guest is Gary Hawkins. Gary, if folks want to get in touch with you and learn more about your work, where do they go?
So the easiest is my email is gary@garyhawkins.info. You can go to garyhawkins.info website and find all my information there. Is probably the easiest, and also certainly on LinkedIn.
Certainly on LinkedIn. Now, one piece of technology that's actually useful, I think, of all these platforms.
That's right.
I think it actually does some good things for us. Well, listen, thanks so much for taking time to join me on the pod. Congratulations on the 4th book. I look forward to the 5th book where you solve the riddle of regulation around AI.
I'll get to work on that.
All right, I'll get you. I will book you now for that interview on the pod. But until then, continued success, and once again, thanks for joining me.
All right, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, follow on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically each week. And be sure and check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast with Steve Dennis and the Global E-Commerce Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, Senior Retail Advisor, Keynote Speaker, Rethink Retail 2023 Global Top Retail Influencer. If you want more content or chat, follow me on LinkedIn. Safe travels, everyone.